Hey, what's going on, everybody? David Noe with Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners. It is February 24th, 2025, episode 25, and I have a special guest with me, a dear friend. I don't even remember when we actually met, Andy, but it has been 20 plus years. Andy Matthews with Neuropeak Pro, former PGA golf professional, University of Michigan. The names go on, the accolades go on, but Andy, welcome to Speakeasy HR, my friend.
David, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it has been a long time, I think, dating back to our junior golf days, so it might even be plus 20 years.
I think it is, and I have a special hat to show everybody.
Ah,
This is vintage from 2007 at Oakmont when you qualified and came up to see you, and unfortunately didn't make the cut, but you got me
unfortunately,
in.
didn't make the cut. Wish I knew then what I know now, but
Oh,
yeah, U.S. Open's back at Oakmont this summer.
and you are going to be doing your best to get there, right, my friend.
You know it.
So for those who are new to Speakeasy HR, we are live on Facebook today, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you are watching, have a comment, have a question for Andy, please chime in. But this is to be interactive and learn from Andy and everything that he has been working on for many years and working with professional athletes and everybody that he has really helped when it comes to breathing, because I've been doing this since the summer and I still get nervous when I come on to do podcasts. I get nervous in pressure meetings and on the first tee and being a parent. So I hope I can learn from you today, because we haven't really gotten deep into this conversation ever. And I've heard about everything you're doing, and I hear about it from PGA professionals and everybody that has connected with Neuropeak. So we're going to dive into a lot of that. We're going to hear more about your background, and really, again, this is to help people in stressful situations, not just golf, and
Right.
people are in leadership and management. So we're going to play, for those who do not know much about Andy. He is the director of golf performance at Neuropeak Pro. So Andy, just to start out, can you tell us a little bit about the company and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to think about what I do from a breath coaching perspective. And like you said, I work with a lot of professional athletes, a lot of golfers. And for those golfers, when they're standing over an important shot, they're feeling the pressure. They're feeling the nerves, cold, sweaty hands, muscle tension, our hearts beating out of our chest. What I do is I help them learn how to breathe in a way so they can manage that stress and perform under pressure. But like you said, and I often say too, the science behind what we do as it relates to breathing doesn't matter if we're a professional golfer, if we're a CEO, if we're a school teacher, a student, or you're David Noe hosting your next episode of your podcast. Like, there's pressure and we all deal with stress. And the cool thing is, it doesn't always have to feel the way that it often does.
Yeah. Very well put. And like I said, we've had conversations about this really since you started, and knowing you before working with Neuropeak and being more of a professional golfer. And I want to go back to when you won your event in 2010, because I was reading, and 2009 you lost in a sudden death playoff in the same tournament you won on the Canadian Tour in 2010. So, obviously that might be one scenario that you wish you knew more back then that you did, that you do now. So yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. But the world famous envelope icebreaker game, I may not know a lot of your answers to these questions, but everyone else is going to learn just like me. So let's get into this envelope icebreaker game. If this will pop up, shifting screens here. Come on, it's thinking. There we go. All right. Mr. Matthews, I've got envelopes 1 through 15. Pick a number.
7.
7. Is that your favorite number? When you shoot 67?
Never hurts.
All right. Okay. Well, when you were in grade school, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Feels like a leading question. You know, when I was in grade school, I'm actually going to say before I even knew that I wanted to play golf professionally, I wanted to be a pilot. That was my thing. And I sit here today with a pilot's license in my back pocket, so I can say I've checked that box. And yeah, that was a dream fulfilled.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that was another thing I wanted to ask because you've done aviation and now you're doing Neuropeak Pro. So, all right, one more number, 1 through 15, not number 7. What
Well,
else you
let's
got?
double 7 and call it 14.
14. All right. 14 it is. Let's see what you get. Oh, I hope it's the rapper question because I love that question. Nope. All right. What is your favorite piece of career advice?
Wow. Favorite piece of career advice? That every moment in golf, like life, is in some way unique and unrepeatable. So make the most of every one, whether it's good or bad.
Very well said. All right. Well, you didn't have to pick the number, but I really want to know because this is how this show goes. It just things come up and I want to know what you would say. So, what's your favorite rapper of all time because I know you listen to rap music.
Yeah, I do not listen to rap music, so I'm going to abstain.
Stain?
Abstain.
Abstain?
I'm gonna choose not to vote or answer.
Well, you're from Michigan, so you could say Eminem if
I mean, we'll
you
go with
know what I
Eminem. We'll
mean.
keep a home team.
You know what I mean? There we go. All right. So, I have Andy Matthews, longtime friend of mine personally. So we both grew up in Michigan, just for people's understanding. So Andy and I played a lot of golf, not together. He was a little bit older than me, but we got connected through friends back then. Got to know your good friend John Burnside, if he is watching or listening. He is a U of M graduate with you, and so from the early 2000s, we've just stayed connected, and just gone to a lot of Michigan games together. Go Blue! With
Yes.
I don't know. Let me move this.
Yeah, we can see it.
You know, so we've seen the ups and downs of a college football team that we both appreciate and have tailgated with, and all sorts of fun there. But when it comes to golf, I want to know, how did you get into golf? Because when I was younger, I was like the only person that I knew playing golf at my age. No one else was playing golf. So when did you first start getting into golf? Because it's now become your day-to-day job in some
Yeah.
form.
I got started. It was my parents. It's what we started to do Sunday afternoons after church.
Yeah,
My dad played, my grandfather played. Recreationally, they didn't have any competitive aspirations, but they really enjoyed getting out there. And I obviously enjoyed getting out there with them and my mom and dad. And so that was at age 5 when I really first picked up a club and got involved in a junior golf program. And there were a couple of kids that were, my age plus or minus a few years. And we just formed a really cool friendship through golf. And we all kind of pushed each other. And, my personal experience with that was like each summer, would kind of one up the previous one. I'd shoot a better score, or I'd start hitting it longer, or maybe I'd win a junior event or something like that. And so, like, I had this pattern that started rolling that had me looking forward to the next summer. And like you said, that carried me on to the University of Michigan and then ultimately a pro career.
yeah, yeah. And so you stayed home, played for the University of Michigan. You were the Big Ten Freshman Player of the Year. You played probably every tournament of your 4 years there, right? Did you even miss a tournament playing in
I
college?
I, I never missed a tournament.
Never missed a tournament. So folks listening that don't know much about college golf, back then there weren't even like, now that I know there are potential opt-in situations where golf teams can only have 9 players. Now that is like capped, just like a lot of other bigger events or teams in college sports. And so you're competing with potentially 8 or more other kids in college to play golf on the travel team, and
Right.
you were in the top 5 the entire time you were there.
Yeah.
So that's
I
that's
earned
pretty.
a I earned a starting spot right out of fall qualifying my freshman year, and you mentioned I had a really good freshman year, and I never looked back.
Yeah. And then you went on, played a few mini tours, Canadian tour, Australia, went around the globe and played
I
golf.
did.
So is there one memory before you started working for Neuropeak? It might have been obviously making the US Open as Oakmont 2007. What's like the one moment that stands out to you in your playing career so far?
Yeah, Oakmont in 2007 was it, and for me personally, obviously, as a golfer, getting to play in a major championship, like personally, that was an awesome experience. But when I look back on it, it was the family and friends that came out of the woodwork, you included, where people were sleeping on couches, they were packing in hotel rooms, just trying to come out and experience it with me and support me. Like that was the coolest part about it. Like teeing it up and feeling all the nerves and rubbing shoulders with the best players in the game. That was awesome. But the the debriefs and kind of the aftermath of hearing everybody's stories, about where they slept and how they got there and the travel nightmares. It was just a priceless experience for me.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an exciting just career that you've had, and now you get to really apply everything that you have learned, and you're still playing competitively.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're trying to qualify for the US Open this year, which is amazing. I mean, you are obviously in it from a player standpoint, but also from breathing technique standpoint, and so I want to dive into that a little bit because people that haven't heard of Neuropeak, you were just at the PGA show, speaking in front of, I think you said, what, 1,700 people, and
It was 750, but it felt like
750.
1,700.
It's about the same. It's good. So let's dive into this topic because, like you said before, when you were talking about the breathing techniques and getting up on the first tee in your club championship, or going into an interview for a job, or going into a big proposal meeting for your job, like everybody deals with stress every
Yeah.
day to some extent.
Yep.
So, why is breathing such a powerful tool with people that are dealing with stress on a day-to-day basis?
So, David, the reason that breathing is so powerful is because of all of the things that we feel when we're under stress, the automatic reactions that our body has. Like I said, high heart rate, butterflies in our stomach, muscle tension, cold sweaty hands, faster breathing. Of all of those automatic functions that our body activates during stress, breathing is the only one that you can control when you think about it.
Yeah.
So you can't think your heart rate slower, you can't think your hands dry. You can control your breathing when you put attention to it. And yes, thankfully, we don't have to think about our breathing 24/7.
Right.
But when we do, your breathing can actually serve as the pace setter or the metronome for all of your other physiological functions. So you walk into a scenario, whether it is that board meeting or that pitch meeting, um, your body's going to have that reaction. And the one thing that you can control is how you breathe. And you can send a really powerful signal that even though all of your senses are saying, this moment is more important than any other one I've experienced today or this week or this year, you can influence your nervous system and get it back into a spot where you can relax, settle in, and perform the way that you've practiced.
Yeah. Very fascinating. So what are some common misconceptions, would you say, about breathing and its role in performance?
The first thing I won't even say it's a misconception. I'll lean into the fact that it's a common understanding that people associate taking a deep breath with relieving stress. David, you may have told the boys, you may have done it yourself, or when you see a friend or a family member that's stressed and you say, hey, take a second, take a deep breath, right? The misconception comes in is how they do it.
Yeah.
And so whether you're watching an athlete on the free throw line or somebody that you just told to take a deep breath and you see them go, it's this big chest filled breath and this big dramatic sigh exhale, it's wrong.
What do you mean it's wrong?
It's wrong because you're doing it biomechanically incorrect. The way that our body responds best to that breath is when it's taken using the diaphragm. So when we take a deep breath, it shouldn't be big and tall. When we inhale, our belly should expand so that the air is getting down to the bottom of our lungs. We're using the full capacity of our lungs, and it takes time to breathe that deeply. And just that slower respiration rate starts to pull the body out of that fight, or freeze response that we often find ourselves in pressure situations.
So when I breathe like you just did, and I did it with you, like that is completely wrong.
If you
And
want to get the benefit out of how your body's designed to respond to a good breath, I'll even stop saying deep breath.
yeah.
We want them to be deep, but it needs to be biomechanically sound. So yes, when you inhale, it should be down into your diaphragm so your belly expands. But it's not just that one deep breath. It's how many good breaths can you stack up over time, either leading up to that stressful situation or when you're in the moment and you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, to be able to use it then and help get your body into a spot where it can settle itself.
So if I have a meeting coming up with, if I'm in a manager role and I'm getting ready to do a presentation, or I have to sit down with someone and have a difficult conversation and I'm nervous, right? Like everybody has the butterflies and, the sweaty hands. And like you said, all the things that lead up to a stressful situation, how much time before that do you feel like someone has to start getting into that rhythm of breathing good breaths, not deep breaths, but good breaths through their diaphragm? Is that like 10 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Like when would someone have to start doing that before they're in a stressful situation, would you say?
So ideally, I tell all of my golfers my non-negotiable is 10 minutes of breathing before you get to the golf course every day.
Okay.
Um, but even if you set aside 5 minutes, or if you only have 2 minutes, like that's going to help to start move the needle in a way that it needs to. And you started to make the point where when you're walking into a stressful situation or that meeting, like then is not the time to start learning how to breathe and manage your stress level. It
Right.
happens the morning of, the night before, the day before, last week, you know, because the more time you spend sending that signal to your body that, hey, everything's okay, even though everything around me is saying otherwise, your body starts to recognize that. And I'll kind of leave it with this point. You're going to take upwards of 18,000 to 20,000 breaths today. In order to start moving the needle in the right direction, I only need you to take 60 good ones.
60 good ones out of 20,000.
And if you can do that 5 days a week, it's less than an hour of breathing every week, you'll start to notice the difference.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Okay. So how have elite athletes and top executives that you have potentially worked with used this to gain a competitive advantage over the years that you've worked with them?
Yeah, it's definitely started to find itself on the forefront of performance training. Like, you know, whether you talk to, leadership in the corporate world or a top athlete, they're all doing the things that they know can help give them an edge. And
Right.
with athletes in particular, they have their trainers, their nutritionists, their swing coaches, their physios, their sports psychologists. Like, there's these teams around these individuals to literally help the nth degree of separation that can show up on Sunday afternoon of a golf tournament when there's multi-million-dollar paychecks on the line. Breathing has found its place into performance training because it influences all of those other things that the player's doing. It How you breathe can play an important role in your resilience and your recovery in the gym. You know, when if you're breathing better, your body moves better. Like, there's all of these things, and again, going back to the understanding that we all have that breathing helps release stress. Nobody really knew how to do it properly. I mean, we've fortunately, the conversation about breathing has started to show up a lot more. But again, it comes down to not knowing how to do it, or hearing about a breathing technique that the Navy SEALs use. Like, you hear box breathing in Navy SEALs all the time. You hear this 4-7-8 breathing method, and 4-7-8 means a 4-second inhale, a 7-second breath hold, and an 8-second exhale. When you think about that, that's a 15-second breath hold.
Yeah.
That's a really long time, and that's a really advanced breathing technique. And does it work? 100%. But your body has to be ready for it. It's like you can't walk into the gym and throw all the plates on the bench and expect to lift them on day one. You have to work up to it.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of the work that I do with individuals, is help identify kind of what those tendencies or what those limitations are as it relates to their physiology and how the body responds to stress. And then what can we do? How can we chart a course? How can we make a path to maybe address some of those efficiencies so that you start sleeping better? You start have better energy management throughout the day. Um, and when you do start to feel a little bit stressed, you know what to do, and more importantly, your body knows how to handle itself when you give it that cue through better breathing.
Fascinating. It's what I think a lot of people's misconception about this is so interesting, because I always hear people say, just take a deep breath, take a deep breath. Like, I tell people that. I've heard people tell me that, like, just calm down, take a deep breath. It's just, we've been doing it all wrong, right? Like, so I guess for people that don't understand, when you're talking about breathing through the diaphragm and getting, you know, a good breath in, is there like steps to get to a general basic understanding of what that would look like?
Yeah, 100%. And whether I'm starting to work with a golfer, a quarterback, a soccer player, CEO, you name it, I start with three keys to better breathing, and it's posture, it's muscle control, and it's pace. So when we talk about posture, you think about if you're grinding over, an email, or you're on a tense call and you start leaning into the camera, leaning into the screen. You're starting to get bad forward posture. Your shoulders are hunching, and that makes it harder for the diaphragm or our belly to move properly when we breathe. So that's number one. Number two is the muscle control. And so, seeing how many people do this when they're breathing or take a deep breath, the best way to start to bring some awareness to the muscles that you're supposed to use when you breathe is take one hand and put it right over your belly button. Dave, I'm making you do this too.
Okay.
And take the other one and put it kind of right over the zipper on your quarter zip there. So you've got one up on your chest, one over your belly.
Yep.
And not even breathing. This isn't even a breathing exercise yet, but I just want you to push your belly out as far as it can go, just like you threw down a big lunch.
Okay.
And now pull your belly button back toward your spine.
Okay.
Okay, so you saw a little bit of movement there when Dave kind of brought that back in. He got a little bit higher, but what you didn't see is when he expanded that belly out, you didn't see it go up. So Dave, if you have that hand on your belly and you kind of get a little bit taller, you feel how your belly gets smaller.
Yeah.
That's what we don't want.
Okay.
So bringing muscle control in is when we inhale, you want to feel your belly fill up like it were a balloon. So it gets bigger when we inhale, and when we exhale, it gets smaller. So that's muscle control. So we've got good posture. Now we're using the right muscles.
Yeah.
Now we need to get into the right pacing. And the reason why pacing is so important is I mentioned 18 to 20,000 breaths per day. That's because we're breathing at 15 to 18 breaths per minute. So think about that. That's inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And knowing that our breathing works like a metronome, kind of setting that pace for our system, even if you and I are just sitting here as buddies having a cool conversation, that our body is getting that signal that we should be stressed just by the way that we're breathing. So we need to slow that down. And the easiest way to slow that down is to move it towards about 6 breaths per minute, which is going to feel and seem really slow. But the way you get there is a 4-second inhale, a 1-second kind of transition over the top, another 4-second exhale, and a 1-second transition into the next breath. So that's a 10-second cycle that puts you at 6 breaths per minute. So now if you stack that pacing on that muscle control, you start to inhale slowly through the nose to 4 seconds. You allow that belly to get bigger. You hold for just a second. And then you exhale and let that belly get a little bit smaller. And if you can do that 60 times, you're going to get 10 minutes of breathing in, and you're going to start to retrain that mind-body connection between how you can relieve stress under pressure.
It sounds easier said than done, Andy.
Well, and it's thankfully, that's why I have a job.
Yeah.
And, you know, if that started to resonate with someone, you can just go to learntobreathebetter.com. I've got a download. It's golf specific, but it dives a little bit deeper into those 3 keys of how you can start learning to breathe better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure it's, you know, I look at, you know, the professional athletes that you work with, primarily golfers and primarily people that are in a situation where it is like an all-day event. It's not just you're going out and playing a football game. Obviously, football players have a lot of pregame preparation, but in a golf event, you're looking at several multiple days over the course of the week, and it's not like you can go out and just compete over 2 hours and be finished. It is a grind of multiple days in a row. So if you are in a job and you have a grind of multiple days with meetings and different interactions with team members and traveling and whatever else has to go on in your job, it's very similar probably in the day-to-day structure of stressful situations. So I guess from your perspective, you know, when you go back to when you first started learning about this, you know, what was your intake at that point? Like, oh, this is something that is cutting edge, no one's ever done it, or this is not going to ever be a successful kind of business. Like, when did you start seeing that and seeing that there is really an opportunity for you to do it as a living?
Well, you make a good point. And so you had mentioned kind of in the intro, in 2009, I lost in a playoff. In 2010, I came back and won the event. It was the fall of 2008 when I started learning how to breathe better. And so it was a complete trajectory changer of my golf career, where I literally went from counting how much money I needed to make and what guys I needed to beat to be able to keep my card for the next year. Roughly 65 players maintained their status when I was playing in Canada at that time, to finishing 10th on the money list that next year. I changed nothing else. I had the same equipment in my bag, the same coach. I was doing all the same things. All I did was starting to add breathing into what I was doing. So I come to these conversations and these conversations with potential clients and current clients of someone who's experienced it and essentially put in the same work that I'm asking them to do now. And then, as life would have it, Neuropeak Pro asked me to help with one of the NFL franchises that we were working with at the time. And so I was embedded with an NFL team through their spring training camp. And while I was there, PGAtour.com writes an article about Bryson DeChambeau's work with us. And leadership at Neuropeak Pro was like, Andy, you're not a quarterback, you're not a kicker, you're the golfer. Will you handle some of these requests? And fortunately, we had some really good success stories. Bryson was obviously one of them. Ryan Brem, another Michigan guy, was a great one. He was struggling on the Corn Ferry Tour at the time, and we started working together. In about 3 or 4 weeks, he started posting some top finishes. Ultimately, won and earned his PGA Tour card. And as we all know, whether it's in sport or in life, when people are having success with something. It's why we look at the reviews on Amazon when we're buying something, right? We look at how many stars it's getting. When they start to see or sense that people are having success with a new product or a new coaching method, what have you, it starts to garner some attention. And that's when I realized, we had something to be able to bring to these athletes. And, we talk a lot about our work with athletes, but again, the science behind stress doesn't change. We're all human beings. Some play a sport for a living, some run companies for a living, some work for companies for a living. And like you said, we have long days. We have long stretches of weeks. If you've only got a couple weeks of vacation, built in, like you have to be on 50 weeks of the year. That takes its toll.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to manage yourself? And the way I like to talk about is creating margin, right?
Yeah.
If we walk into the office every day and we're already at an 8, and 10 is where, we start to hit our red line and we start to lose our patience, we don't have that much headroom to be able to play with.
Yeah.
And with something as simple as breathing, not only can we start to lower that starting point, so now we've got more headroom to play with. If, an email that was written with a poor tone or somebody said something to you in the break room that just didn't sit well with you, you've got some margin to play with. But then the long-term effects, Dave, and where I think this becomes a really powerful tool is not only are we lowering our respective starting point, but over time we start to increase our ceiling.
Yeah.
So that bad email or that comment in the break room that may have put us over the edge now doesn't have that big of an effect on us. And so
Right.
that allows us to be more present in conversations. When we do have the chance to finally shut the computer down at the end of the day and go be, a father, mother, spouse, brother, sister, however you want to define what you do after work, like you can be a better version of yourself because you have the margin to be able to do that. Because we want to put our best selves forward in our job, but equally, if not much more important, is how we bring ourselves to our family.
Yeah.
And so, there's so many things that we can do. We all know we should go to the gym more. We all know we should eat better. Maybe we shouldn't drink as much of that wild turkey that's over your shoulder. But with just 5 or 10 minutes of breathing a day, you can do it at your desk.
So what about if you are not stressed and something comes across your desk, or you get a phone call from your spouse or your kids and it just switched in your head that you are now stressed, you're panicked, you're anxious, you're like reaction, you're trying to maintain composure in a pressure situation with emotional intelligence and things that some people don't really know how to react in situations like that. So how can breathing, if someone gets into that situation instantly, Is it taking, obviously a deep breath is probably the quickest way to try to calm yourself down, but is there something that's going to be a little different as opposed to getting prepared before a stressful meeting or a stressful conversation, that would be a little different? Or would it be, what would you suggest in that situation?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is be thankful that your body does what it's designed to do when the brain senses a threat. Whether you get cut off on the highway or you get that unexpected phone call and you feel those feels, like your body is doing exactly what it's programmed to do.
Right.
So that's a good thing. The next thing that I like to see my clients do is just to take a moment and breathe. And that's a different phraseology than take a deep breath, but take a moment and breathe. But some things require split second decisions and split second reactions. But if you can give yourself 10 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe a minute before you dive into it, even though that's going to feel like an eternity, I think you'll be surprised at how different you approach the situation, and perhaps how much better and more quality decisions are made. And the reason why, not to get too sciencey here, but when we breathe well or breathe poorly, the first part of our brain that gets influenced is our frontal lobe, so like our prefrontal cortex. And that's where all of our emotional control, our decision making, our planning, our organization happens. So think about that as a human being first. Like, those are just things we need to be really good at. As an employee or doing what we do from a 9 to 5, also really important. So if we're not, allowing ourselves or introducing margin into our physiology and training it to be able to adapt to that, we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so by incorporating, again, whether it's a couple of minutes before you walk into that important meeting, it goes such a long way. And the good thing is there's so much science behind breathing and performance, and we can measure it now. Like, we can show you what your breathing and what your heart rate and heart rate variability looks like when you're stressed. And we can show you what it looks like when you're in a balanced state and in a spot that some people might say you're in flow or in the zone. And in order to move yourself to the doorstep of that flow state, a lot of us believe that it starts with better breathing.
And that's the whole mindset for Neuropeak Pro is to help your clients stay in the zone, because I've been in it. I remember when I would be competing against you in the Michigan Open and I was trying to beat you, and I would get in the zone, and I was in college. I wasn't professional yet. I was playing with a bunch of PGA professionals in this statewide tournament, and I was like in the zone, and I was playing well, and then I'd have a bad hole, and like I remember those guys like, hey, because I would get a little angry when I'd make a bad shot or miss a putt, and if I knew some of those things that obviously now, it's like, what would have happened? Might have stayed in the zone longer.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the year you actually, didn't you win it that year?
I never won the Michigan Open. The Michigan Am was, shoot, that
Okay.
was, I did that. But
One of those.
to your point, it's a really valid point, because we've all had those experiences. Whether you're writing something, or you're putting together a really cool pitch, and you just like, you get into it and you come up for a glass of water or whatever it is, and you're like, man, where did those last 2 or 3 hours go?
Yeah.
Like, we all know what it feels like to get into that state.
Yeah.
And typically it feels like time slows down a little bit, but in those cases, like, time just goes so fast because you're in your spot. Like, you have access to all of your skills and your talents, and that's what's really exciting. And there's physiological, science-backed ways to help move your body into that state. Now, can we guarantee that you're going to get into the zone every time you step on the golf course or step on a podium to give a presentation? No. But can we move your body into a state that helps increase the likelihood that it may? Absolutely.
Because every week on the PGA Tour, when these guys are playing, you are working with a percentage of those players, so they all have a similar attitude towards breathing, and they're all competing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that number keeps increasing because over time, I know you have increased your amount of golfers. So, I think, are you seeing it more even before professional golf that, in college? Are you seeing more activity there too?
Yeah, there's golf, as maybe as much as any sport, has that trickle down effect from, what we see Sunday afternoons on the golf tournament broadcast, down into the college game. I've been fortunate to work with some top college teams, some elite amateurs, some national teams, and even just, you know, your weekend warrior or your Saturday gamer who wants to take a few more dollars off his or her buddies.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're all competitive at some level, and we all want to do our best, whatever it is that we're gonna do. And so, yeah, do the tour players get the most of the social proof? For sure. But I have a client, he's 65, he just sold his business, he wants to get back into the game, and he just wants to beat his buddies.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what's one actionable step that listeners can take to start improving their breathing and performance?
So I mean, we talked about this, and one of the things that I wanted to offer the listeners is an opportunity to take a free breathing assessment.
Yep.
So there's a QR code up on the screen. You can go to learntobreathebetter.com too to find that, or throw a few minutes on my calendar if you want to talk about this more. But everything needs a starting point. We don't know what we don't know. And so that breathing assessment, what it'll do is it takes about 90 seconds. It's super easy to do. It asks you 5 questions kind of around stress, around sleep, some things you notice about yourself. And then what it'll do is a quick breathing test just to measure your body's tolerance to carbon dioxide, which is a really important indicator for how your body might or might not be able to handle stress. And so once you get that result, and it'll score you and it'll tell you a little bit about yourself, what you can do there is take a next step into accessing these personalized breathing sessions. And it's a really cool platform because the next time you come in, it's just going to ask you, how do you want to feel?
Yeah.
Do you want to feel less stressed? Do you want to feel ready for sleep? Do you want to feel energized because you're about ready to walk into the gym? Or do you just want to feel in control of your breath? And based on what that assessment helped identify about you and how you want to feel in that moment, it's going to give you a 5 or 6 minute breathing session to be able to help elicit that state change. It's one that's physiologically appropriate for you, not a really difficult box breathing pattern or 4-7-8 like we talked about. It's for you to help you get that. So that's a huge first step, is to help identify where you are, and then from there you can take the next step, however, if it makes sense, to dive into some of those sessions.
Yeah, and you're also doing the Intel belt, which is a different product outside of the breathing. So explain a little bit real quick on the Intel belt and what people can use that for.
Yeah, the Intel belt is the first of its kind wearable that not only shows you your heart rate and heart rate variability, so your stress levels, but also what your physical breathing looks like. So there's heart rate monitors galore on the market, and they'll give you insight into that physiological side, but what it doesn't do is give you that feedback into the physical side. So that exercise that we did a little bit earlier, where we expanded the diaphragm out, made the belly get bigger as we inhale, you can actually measure and see exactly what that looks like. And that's what the Intel belt does. And it was patented last fall. We're super excited about that. It was a long, arduous process, but we needed it because there wasn't anything like it on the market to be able to do the type of coaching that we do at Neuropeak Pro.
Very interesting stuff, Andy. I think it's such a fascinating thing that everybody, obviously listening to this, hopefully has learned from. And like you said, you don't have to be a PGA professional to do this. It's how can you do it in your day-to-day life and breathe better and do it in a way that's going to help you in situations, whether it's on the golf course, in the job, being a parent, So my blog of the week was out today. It's on clarity, which everyone's distracted. There's chaos in everybody's lives. So this falls in line with a lot of what Andy has talked about today, is just staying clear, having that clarity in your mind and being ready and prepared for any situation, whether it's trying to take some money from your buddy at the golf course or going into a job interview and really executing and getting the job. So definitely take a look at some of the other work on speakeasyhr.com and learn more about what I'm working on there. But Andy, anything else that you want to say to the folks listening about Neuropeak, or anything from breathing, or just anything in general?
Yeah, just take a first step. You can do it right from where you're sitting or listening to. If you're listening to this into the car or in the car, just bring a little bit of attention to how you're breathing. If you're sitting at your desk, it fortunately, like we said, you breathe every minute of every day without ever thinking about it. But if we can just start to do it a little bit better, I think you'll be amazed at how you feel.
Yeah, 20,000 breaths a day.
And we just need 60 good ones.
Yeah, it's good stuff, Andy. Really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. What's next in your world? What can we look out for in the future with you guys?
Yeah, with Neuropeak Pro, we're excited that golf season is rolling around. I've got some really cool pressure putting clinics planned for the spring and summer with some clubs around the country. So maybe coming to a neighborhood near you. But again, if you just want to get started and kind of try out what we do, that QR code that Dave threw up is such a cool place to start. And if you go to learntobreathebetter.com, you can schedule a discovery call with me. If you're on the HR or corporate side and you're like, man, I would love for my employees to learn more about this, let's talk about how we can do it. Unfortunately, we breathe and we can breathe better.
AI will not take over that part of our day-to-day jobs.
No, thank goodness.
Unfortunately. Yeah, thank goodness. All right. Well, Andy, I appreciate your time. It was great to learn more about what you're into with Neuropeak Pro, and appreciate everyone listening. Tune in 2 weeks from today, brand new episode on essential skills for leaders. So, Andy, we'll talk again soon, my friend, and good luck and best wishes to you and your family. And obviously, got to end with Go Blue because of our Michigan
Go
ties.
Blue.
So excited for another fun season of college athletics, and we'll be looking out for your work in the future, my friend.
David, thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you later.